In 1995, when most Americans thought the nuclear nightmare was over, we came as close as we have ever come to a nuclear exchange with Russia. And it all happened entirely by accident.
The Norwegian rocket accident, also known as the Black Brant scare, is a sparsely known incident about how the United States and Norway launched a rocket to study the Northern Lights. But for some reason, the Russian Federation did not get the memo. Before going into further discussion, it would be better to give a brief description of some of the technology and concepts that will be mentioned throughout this video. The first thing to know about some of this stuff is the difference between a rocket and a missile. To put it simply, a missile is a rocket with some sort of guidance system. A simple computer chip, for example. The next thing to know would be some of the types of missiles. A Trident missile is simply a nuclear missile that can be launched from a submarine. It's mostly used by the United States and the United Kingdom. Though there are multiple designs and types. For instance, rather interestingly enough, the Trident II is a MIRV that can carry up to 14 different warheads. MIRV stands for Multiple Independently Targetable Reentry Vehicle. This means there can be multiple warheads, and there can be 15 nuclear warheads in one MIRV, depending on the model, of course. This is by far the most destructive weapon that humankind has ever created, given the payload is nuclear. And a test strike of one is shown as the background picture. The final point is going to be nuclear fallout, which is when radioactive particles from a nuclear bomb are released due to the detonation of said nuclear device. The lethality of the fallout depends on how well the radioactive particles are spread, the type of radioactive particle, what element it is, its half-life, and its type of decay. Now, it is time to go back to the Russians, and what they were thinking. It is most likely that it seemed to them as if a United States submarine had launched a Trident missile at Russia. For a few minutes, Russia was ready to launch an all-out nuclear strike on the United States. Though, luckily, the president of Russia at the time, Boris Yeltsin, decided to wait until he was sure it was a nuclear missile before retaliating. In the end, nuclear war obviously did not break out, though this is not the first time that this has happened. In 1979, there's the training tape incident, where a training tape for a massive Soviet nuclear strike was taken as real. In 1980, less than a year later, a computer chip malfunctioned. The United States once again prepared for the retaliation of a non-existent Soviet nuclear strike. In 1983, a Soviet satellite gave out incorrect readings due to the angle of the sunlight striking the lens. Luckily, the Soviets did not fire because they did not believe that the United States would only launch a few missiles to start a war, as the satellite had read. The Norwegian rocket accident is one of the most recent nuclear false alarms. We have come very close in the past, though what if for some reason a nuclear war was started? What might that look like?
Huge firestorms whip up great winds and send enormous clouds of smoke miles into the atmosphere. There are enough strategic nuclear weapons in the world to ignite every major city in the northern hemisphere and produce enough smoke to blanket most of the land. From high above the North Pole, the first nuclear exchange looks like an eerie display of fireworks. Its combined force is 400,000 times greater than the Hiroshima bomb. In the days and weeks that follow, clouds of soot enshroud the Earth. Temperatures plummet. The planet is gripped in a nuclear winter.
This is why a nuclear war is so feared. Everything within several miles of the blast, depending on the payload, will burn. Sometimes an even greater radius than that. The radioactive particles can lead to radiation sickness, contaminating some areas for decades, and spreading for hundreds, if not thousands of miles. Then the ash from the explosion will reach the upper atmosphere, and global temperatures will drop, therefore diminishing the world's food supply and food production. The deadliest aspect of a nuclear war is not the continental radiation, but the worldwide food shortage. Say there was a global nuclear war, and all of Earth was covered in ice due to the nuclear winter. This is known as a snowball Earth. Earlier on, this system was thought to be so stable that it would remain forever, though later this was discovered to be false. This is due to the fact that volcanic activity releases small amounts of carbon dioxide, which will eventually help warm the climate. Even though life on Earth would not be destroyed completely, it would have to start all over again. This may seem ridiculous, but then again, there is the nuclear policy of MAD, or Mutually Assured Destruction, started by John F. Kennedy in the 60s. This means that if anybody launches a nuclear missile at the United States, then both nations will be completely destroyed from the resulting nuclear blasts, fallout, cold, and food shortages. Given this information, no reasonable person would ever hope to start a nuclear war. Well, there lies the problem. Only a reasonable person would refrain from using nuclear weapons. World leaders like Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, have explicitly stated that they wish to use nuclear weapons against their enemies. In recent years, Pakistan and India almost had a nuclear war, in 1990 to be exact. But the United States decided to pick up on it, and they intervened. Such a war could have easily killed 2 billion people. With all of this information, would it be best to get rid of them all? Is this a call for nuclear disarmament? No. No, it is not. Humankind is not ready to do such a thing. At this point in our history, one person or one nation would decide to go back, giving themselves the power of nuclear weapons for the first time, or perhaps even once again. If that were to happen, there would be no one to stand in their way if they were to launch. The threat of nuclear war has also tended to act as a deterrent for going to war directly. So it is likely that nuclear weapons will never be fully decommissioned. When it was first brought into this world, this was inevitable. The best we can do is to dedicate ourselves to prevent new threats from popping up. We may be forever cursed to live in fear of our own creations, but this is nothing new. These creations may seem to take away the honor and glory of war and conquest, though perhaps this is a good thing. A lonely house full of honor is still empty. One death is worth as much as another. A dead soldier is still a dead man or woman. Even if, for some reason, the human race is completely destroyed, by ourselves wielding our creations, or by our creations themselves, the wheel of time will continue to turn, one way or another.
Dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and the turtle was very alert. When when danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and covered, ducked and covered.
He did what we all must learn to do.
And you